fiber?
It's just the fastest appearing macronutrient in the human diet.
Yeah, it supports digestion, gut health, weight management.
Cholesterol levels.
But most of us aren't getting nearly enough, right?
Yes. We usually take half of what is recommended.
Welcome to Don't Look Up, where we encourage you to look up. Today we're talking all about fiber. First question, what is fiber? What does it do?
Technically, fiber is a carbohydrate. So when people say carbs, it's really a mixture of the carbohydrates that can give you your glucose plus the carbohydrates that are fiber. And fiber can be classified into two types. They're called soluble fiber. They dissolve in water and they form a gel-like substance. As insoluble fiber just passes through the intestines. When you look at the food label, for example, take a look at how much fiber it contains, right? And you can subtract, for example, the total carbohydrate minus the fiber, minus the sugar alcohols, if any, then you can get the net carbs. And that will tell you how many grams of fiber you're actually having and what the total carbohydrate intake is going to be.
So why is fiber so important overall? And we talked about how it's the macronutrient that is more lacking in our diet now than ever before.
It's very easy. For example, if you eat lots of fiber, you say, oh my God, I'm already full, right? Yeah. So it's useful for weight management. Right? So a lot of people drink psyllium husk or something before a meal, and that's because they want to feel full earlier, right? And of course, it's important for digestive health, right? You prevent constipation, you promote regular bowel movements, which is such a relief in the mornings, right? If you're a morning pooper.
Evacuate in the morning is always a great idea. Yeah.
And then, of course, heart health. Right? Because it actually can reduce blood pressure because it forms like a gel around it. It also can lower blood sugar. Mm-hmm. There is, in fact, a prescribed medication, a carbose, right? Which does exactly that. Yeah. Right? So the other thing is that it can reduce disease risk, right? So it can, high fiber diet can prevent the formation of certain chronic diseases like diabetes, etc. When you don't eat enough fiber, the bacteria in your colon cannot produce butyrate, and low butyrate levels. So this is, in fact, for me, the most important role of fiber is that they serve as the food of your gut microbiota. And in the colon, the butyrate is produced. If you are taking in fiber, it's actually eaten by the bacteria there. They produce butyrate, which is the food of the cells of your colon. So it's actually known that low butyrate levels equals colon cancer, right? And that's a very tight correlation. So it's actually quite interesting that, if you're not eating fiber and it's not as healthy, your colon will also not produce vitamin B12. So there you go.
Yeah, there's a great article that was a number of years ago now called Super Poopers.
Yes,
and
yes.
This is an article talking about how the more butyrate that you have in your stool, the higher chance you're going to live longer overall. So it's correlated with longevity overall, the more butyrate that you have.
Well, you could also just say, if you don't get colon cancer and die from it, you live longer.
Also true. What about those carnivores out there, right? So we have people out there that are doing extreme diets overall. What's the argument for a carnivore that it's going to be okay to do that long term?
You see, that's it with fads, right? You say carnivore, herbivore, whatever-vor.
Omnivore.
It will have its effects for a few weeks, right? Because it's probably repleting something that you need. But after that, it doesn't work anymore. And that's why, I am paleo eater, right?
Yeah.
It's high fiber carbs, which is the first group, essential fats, right? And sometimes I get accused of being the avocado eater, and then lean protein, right? And this is when I'm asked what I eat biochemically because those are macronutrients. You have to take a look at the quality of your macronutrients.
Yeah, I mean, most of these carnivores out there now too are also having honey, fruit, other things that are not meat related, right? Because they can't sustain.
Yes, because in the cycles of the body, protein, for example, is the last thing that the body uses for energy, right? Protein is only cannibalized in severe starvation. If you see, like, for example, protein calorie malnutrition, that are used in ads to donate to these children, that are skeletal. And the phenomenon is actually called kwashiorkor, right? So you could see here that, the body has preferences in its use of fuel. Carbohydrates are first, and then fats.
Right. And then protein as a last resort.
Yes, and fats are second because they're stored, right? So you can use them for, for winter.
Right, winter metabolism.
Yeah, or us in the tropics, when we're hungry.
Dr. Ted, how do we get more fiber in our diet overall?
When I talk to my clients about it, I always refer them to green leafy vegetables, right? Because not only are leafy greens full of fiber, they're also full of minerals like magnesium and other things, right? So the others are things that you hate to eat, like broccoli, cauliflower, nuts and seeds like almonds, chia, berries, raspberries, blackberries. The eating the rainbow concept, I do that only with berries.
So your berries are rainbow.
Yeah. Avocados are also high in fiber and fats.
And fat too,
right?
yeah.
Right.
So you're going to slow down digestion, help you feel full.
Right.
Good to have in the beginning. So what about some of these?
Oh, but not too much avocados though.
Yeah.
I just had a client who, started eating, essential fats and all avocados, right? So it can raise your metabolite called 5-hydroxyindole acetic acid, which is a marker for serotonin, right?
Okay,
So it means that serotonin levels, the usage of serotonin is very high. Avocados can raise that. And as a physician, you could be alarmed. It's like, holy cow, I should send this person to for diagnostics of carcinoid syndrome. So you have to be careful.
Yeah. So when it comes to fiber, as far as supplementation, there's different types, right? There's selective fiber, there's non-selective fiber. If you're taking it as, like you talked about psyllium husk, for example, when do you start adding those things in with your patients if they just can't get enough from their green leafy vegetables, et cetera? Yeah,
there's an amount of fiber, just as a rule of thumb that I tell my adult patients to do. It's 34 grams of fiber for men and women. It's easier to remember, right? But for men and women, the guideline is men under 50 is 38 grams, women under 50 is 25 grams, men over 50 is 30 grams, and women over 50 is 21 grams. But
this is like the RDA thing, though?
So what I do is just an easy number to remember is 34. It's like, it's useless to have all these numbers and present them to your client, and they don't remember it anyway. You put them in their protocols, but they don't read it anyway. So just say 34 grams of fiber,
Cool. Fiber for constipation, Dr. said.
Yes, that's usually the first go-to if you're constipated, right? But if you're chronically constipated, then it's probably a different issue. So you can take what's called non-soluble fiber if you're constipated, right? Because soluble fiber will really just adhere to your intestines.
Yeah, not gonna work. Yeah.
But so you probably would like to take some insoluble fiber, and if it's chronic, right, you might want to check your thyroid, because check the gastrointestinal motility that way.
It's amazing to me how many people are walking around and not pooping more than once every week or twice a week. It's crazy.
I was at an anti-aging conference once, and the toilets were flushing like every few minutes, and it turns out they poop after every meal, and for them that's normal, right?
Yes.
For us, mere mortals, it's only once a day, right?
Well, that gastrocolic reflux can be pretty intense for some people.
But those who are constipated, they say, oh my God, you're lucky for even once a day, right?
Yeah, I know you've had patients like this as well, where they haven't been pooping more than once a week.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's related to our sedentary behavior, moving around.
Yes.
But a big part of this is the fiber piece too.
Yeah, well, what can help you poop really is a combination of a high fiber diet and exercise and good sleep, right? Those and for those people who actually drink something early in the morning, right? Most of us do. Even water, it can trigger the gastrocolic reflex and make you poop. However, if you destroy your sleep cycle by frequent travel,
Yeah.
etc. I had a friend.
Never done that before.
I have a friend actually who is constipated, right? And then gets very cranky in the morning because
Yes.
that's one of the effects of constipation, right?
Yes.
He starts blaming the stock market for its performance rather than asking himself, am I constipated? Am I hungry? You know, and that's one of the things about fiber, right, is that it makes you irritable if you're unable to expel your poop,
Yes,
right? But
yeah.
you don't even recognize it that, oh, I'm constipated,
Yeah,
right?
what I always ask my kids when they're angry is, number one, are you hungry?
Yeah.
And number two, when's the last time you
yeah, you got that from me.
Exactly. So the hangry thing is real. You know?
Yeah.
And some people, especially if you're on more of like a glucose-rich diet, you're going to have that blood sugar drop
Yeah.
every 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
And so with the kids, they're going to be eating more of that stuff in general. And so it's kind of like clockwork. If you don't get them food after a certain amount of time, you'll see them get a little hangry.
Yeah, well, as I said, my concern, and I've lectured this for over 15 years now, is that fiber is the fastest disappearing macronutrient in the human diet, right? So we ought to put more of this in. I'm guilty of this because my coffee actually has 10 grams of fiber. So, you know, I aim
We
for
don't call it, it's actually mud, right? It's not actually coffee.
It's my coffee mud with all sorts of things in
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But, you know, a good 10 grams of it is actually fiber. Yeah, so.
Cool. Thanks so much for tuning in to Don't Look Up, where we encourage you to look up. A space for real conversations about health, powered by your curiosity and founded and grounded in science.